The veil fluttered in the wind like a torn flag, white against the hard blaze of the afternoon sun. Dust rose at her feet, clinging to the hem of her dress. She did not move. She did not cry. Her hands were clasped before her, knuckles pale beneath lace gloves as the town watched in silence. The church doors stood open behind her, the bell above stilled, its ropes swaying just enough to creak. A tumbleweed rolled across the road, bumping against the steps where she waited, alone. Faces leaned from porches, from cracked shutters, from the doorway of the saloon. Murmurs carried through the heat like flies. He ain't comin'. Left her standin', poor thing. Or maybe she was never meant to be took. The bride did not turn her head. Her eyes were set on the empty road stretching east, where the horizon shimmered with heat. Every rider who passed that way came into town with a purpose. No rider came for her. The saloon doors swung once, twice. A man stepped out, squinting at the sight. He spat in the dust and muttered, "No one's fool enough to touch her now." The doors clapped behind him, sealing away the music of cards and glasses. A crow settled on the church steeple, cawed once, then spread its wings. The sound cut across the silence. And then the horse came. Iron shoes rang on the packed road, slow, steady. A figure rode in, hat pulled low, coat faded by sun and weather. The horse carried dust on its hide, as though it had traveled far. The rider did not look to the saloon or the staring faces. He looked only at her. The bride lifted her chin. The wind pressed the torn veil against her cheek. The rider drew rein at the foot of the steps. He swung down, boots landing heavy in the dirt. The horse blew through its nose, stamping once. No one spoke. He reached to his saddlebag, pulled free a tin canteen, and unscrewed the cap. The sound of water shifting inside carried clear in the dry air. He held it out. Her hands trembled when she took it. She drank, slow, as if afraid the water would vanish if she asked too much. Then she lowered it, eyes meeting his. Their silence was louder than the murmurs gathering behind them. A voice from the saloon porch barked, "Best leave her be, stranger. She ain't yours." The rider did not look away from her. His voice was low, rough from the trail. "Ain't nobody's then." The crowd hushed. The words hung like smoke. The bride's veil whipped in the wind, wrapping around her wrist. She pressed it down with one gloved hand, but her gaze never left his. For the first time that day, something flickered in her eyes. Not hope, not yet, but something that kept her standing. From a far side of the street, an old man leaning on a cane muttered, "That there's Elias Cole." Man's walked with sorrow like a shadow. The name rustled through the onlookers, but the rider gave no sign he'd heard. A wagon rattled past, driver urging the mules faster as if the sight of the pair unsettled even the beasts. The bride held still, veil tugging, lace glove stained now with dust where she gripped the canteen. "Left at the altar," someone whispered. "Or maybe left for dead. They say her promised man had dealings with killers." The rider's jaw worked once. His eyes were not on the whispers, not on the town, only on her. The church door banged wider, preacher stepping out with sweat darkening his collar. His gaze darted between them, then to the watching crowd. He wrung his hands, voice shaking as he spoke. "It ain't proper. Not like this." The rider turned his head, slow, steady. "She's standing alone." The preacher swallowed hard, but said no more. The bride drew a breath. Her voice cracked, but it carried. "He said he'd come for me. Promised me the day. Then he left me here." Her words cut through the town like a knife. For the first time, Elias's expression shifted. Grief lived there, raw and unhidden, yet steadied by something older than pain. The wind dropped. The silence deepened. The rider lifted his hat from his head, the sun showing the hard lines of his face, the wear of years and the hollow space behind his eyes. He looked at her as though he'd seen his own reflection. "Then you ain't left no more," he said. Gasps carried across the road. The preacher stiffened. The saloon doors creaked again, men stepping out to hear. "You can't mean it," someone muttered. "Ain't been but a breath since she was shamed." "He don't even know her name." The rider did not answer. He only stepped forward, offering his hand. The bride stared at it, her chest rising fast beneath torn silk. Her veil snapped behind her like a banner. Slowly, she reached out. Her hand found his. The whispers rose to shouts. The town could not believe it, would not believe it. But the rider and the bride stood at the church steps, hand in hand, while the sky bled red with the dying sun. And the old man on the cane, voice like gravel, said loud enough for all to hear, "Mark this night." Elias Cole's claimed the bride no one wanted. The bell rope swayed again, wood groaning, though no one touched it. The sound lingered like an omen in the heated dusk. Lanterns shook on their hooks as hooves thundered down the road. The ground quivered with the weight of 6 riders breaking into Dust Creek under a sky thick with stars. Spurs clinked, rifles gleamed across saddle horns, and every door shuddered closed as if the town itself held its breath. Clara clutched Elias's arm, her nails digging through his coat. "It's them." The riders slowed, fanning out across the street. Their leader pulled forward, black hat low, grin crooked in the firelight spilling from the saloon windows. Jed Brayburn's voice carried sharp. "Well, look here, my runaway bride." Laughter rippled from the men behind him, cold as rattlesnake rattles. Elias stood still in the dust, Clara at his side. His hand hovered inches from his holster, but his eyes stayed locked on Jed. "You've got no claim," Elias said, voice low. Jed spat into the dirt. "She was mine by promise. Ain't no man takes what belongs to me." From the boardwalk, the townsfolk pressed against the shadows. Nobody spoke. Nobody stepped forward. Clara's chin rose. Her voice cut clear. "I was never yours, Jed." The gang jeered, spitting, stomping boots. Jed's grin faltered, replaced by a sneer. "You think you'll stand tall behind this broken widower? Don't you know who I am?" Elias's hand brushed the handle of his revolver, knuckles pale in the lantern glow. He spoke like stone. "Don't you know who I am?" Jed's eyes narrowed. "Heard tell. A man who swore off the gun. A widower who lost his nerve when death took his woman." Clara felt Elias's breath steady, the faint rise and fall of his chest. He didn't deny it. Jed leaned from the saddle, voice rising. "Give her over, or we burn this town to the ground, and your blood'll be first in the dust." Elias took one step forward. The crowd sucked air sharp. His shadow stretched long across the road. "Then draw," he said. The words cracked like a whip. The gang erupted, boots hitting dirt, rifles shifting, hands darting for iron. Clara's gasp was swallowed in the roar of hooves as the riders spread, circling. The preacher shouted for mercy, voice breaking against the rising storm. Elias's revolver cleared leather in a blur of steel. The first outlaw dropped before his gun even roared, chest bursting crimson in lantern light. Chaos broke. Gunfire shattered the night, sparks lighting the street. Boards splintered, glass fell from windows. Townsfolk ducked behind barrels and doors. Clara scrambled back, her skirts catching on nails. Her hand struck something heavy leaning against the church wall. A rifle, half forgotten in the dust. She pulled it up, breath ragged, eyes wild. Elias moved with the rhythm of a man who had done this before. Each step sure, each shot exact. A second outlaw fell from the saddle, boot caught in stirrup, body dragged screaming down the street. Jed roared, wheeling his horse, firing wild. Bullets hissed past Elias, cutting grooves in the church post. Elias didn't flinch. The third outlaw lunged from behind, blade flashing. Clara raised the rifle, hands shaking, and fired. The man crumpled to the dirt, eyes wide in shock. Smoke curled from the rifle barrel, trembling in her grip. Elias's glance flicked to her for a heartbeat, a spark of something fierce in his gaze, before he turned back to the fight. Gunfire rang until the night stank of powder. Men shouted, horses screamed, lanterns swayed as though the town itself reeled. One by one, the gang broke. Elias dropped a fourth with a shot that echoed like thunder in the canyon. The fifth turned tail, horse bolting into the dark. Only Jed remained, circling, eyes burning red beneath his brim. His pistol smoked, teeth bared. "You think you're faster than me, old man?" Jed barked. Elias's revolver hung steady at his side, his boots planted firm in the dust. "You'll find out," he said. The street hushed. The wind itself seemed to stop. Even the horses held still, ears flat, nostrils flaring. Clara's breath hitched as Jed dismounted, stepping into the road. He twirled his pistol, metal catching firelight, and leveled it at Elias. The distance was 10 paces. The air was fire and silence. Jed's grin widened. "Say goodbye to your second bride." The crowd recoiled. Clara's cry split the night. But Elias's eyes were cold steel. His hand blurred. The shot cracked before Jed's finger twitched. His pistol spun from his grasp, clattering into the dust. Blood streaked his wrist where the bullet tore through. Jed screamed, clutching the ruin of his hand, falling to his knees. Elias stood over him, gun still smoking, not a tremor in his stance. "You walk out of here alive," Elias said, voice flat as desert stone. "But you'll never raise iron again." The silence after those words was heavier than any gunfire. Jed writhed, snarling, but the fight was gone. His men were gone. The street belonged to Elias Cole. Clara lowered the rifle, breath heaving, eyes locked on him. The town stared, whispers stirring like leaves in the wind. The widower of Red Rock. He still got in him. The legend they'd buried walked again, standing tall in the lantern smoke, with the bride no one wanted at his side. The preacher's hand shook so badly the Bible slipped against his palm. He fumbled to steady it, eyes darting between the man and the woman standing before him in the dim church light. Lanterns hissed, shadows crawling along the wooden walls. Elias Cole's voice cut the silence. "Say the words, preacher." Clara's veil quivered where it clung to her hair. Her hands twisted the lace gloves, threads snapping as she fought to keep still. The pews behind them groaned beneath the weight of townsfolk who had followed inside. Their whispers filled the rafters. "Madness, that's what this is. Don't reckon it'll last till morning. God help 'em both." The preacher's throat clicked dryly as he swallowed. He opened the book, pages rustling like dead leaves. "Do you, Elias Cole, take this woman, Clara, to be your wedded wife, in sickness and in health, till death?" "Death already took one," Elias said, voice steady, cutting across the words. "Speak it plain, preacher." The preacher faltered, but Clara's eyes rose to Elias then, sharp and searching. In their reflection was not pity, but recognition. "I do," Elias said. The words fell like iron. The preacher turned, lips trembling. "And do you, Clara?" "I do," she whispered before the sentence was finished. Her voice cracked, but did not falter. The crowd stirred. Boots shifted, skirts brushed the wood, but no one dared move closer. The preacher pressed on. Then, by the power of... The door slammed open. Wind rushed in, scattering the candles so the room flickered like a storm of fireflies. Outside, the clang of horses' tack echoed faint in the night air. Clara stiffened. Her hand gripped Elias's sleeve. The preacher stammered, "By the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife." The last words trembled out like a prayer. Elias took Clara's hand in his, not with tenderness, but with the weight of a vow forged in dust and silence. Their fingers locked. The townsfolk gasped, and one man muttered under his breath. Fool Dunn tied himself to her curse. The saloon keeper's laugh followed. "Best dig his grave now." But Elias didn't turn. He held Clara's hand, as though anchoring them both against the storm outside. The preacher lowered his head, mumbling scripture as if to shield himself from what had just been bound. Elias guided Clara down the aisle. Boards creaked under his boots, the long dress whispering across the planks. When they stepped into the open air, night was folding down fast, stars sharp above the canyon rim. The town stood gathered, waiting, men with arms crossed, women clutching shawls. Eyes judged, doubted, condemned. Clara's fingers tightened against Elias's, but her chin lifted. Her veil tore further in the wind, strips trailing like ghosts behind her. At the hitching post, Elias swung his horse's reins free. He turned to her. "You riding?" Her lips parted, but no sound came. He cupped his hand at her elbow, steadying her as she stepped up into the saddle before him. She swayed once, then leaned into the hollow of his chest as his arms closed around her, the leather reins pulling taut in his grip. Gasps followed them as the horse lurched forward. The sound of hooves striking dirt rang loud in the hush. They passed the saloon, where men leaned against posts with whiskey on their breath. One spat at the ground near Elias's boot. Won't be long till she ruins him same as the last. Elias did not look. They rode through the narrow street, lantern light flickering across their faces. Children peered from behind skirts, eyes wide at the sight of the bride, claimed by a stranger. The sound of dogs barking rose as they cleared the edge of town. Only then did Clara's voice break the silence, low and trembling. "You don't know me." Elias's jaw tightened. "Don't need to." Her hands twisted in the reins, knuckles white. "He left me shamed. Said I wasn't worth the trouble." Elias's breath rasped close to her ear. Ain't his to say. The night pressed in around them, cicadas buzzing, the desert stretching endless beneath the stars. For the first time since dawn, Clara's tears slid down her cheeks. The wind caught them, dried them before they could fall. She did not wipe them away. Elias kept his eyes on the dark horizon, hands steady on the reins, the other firm at her waist. Behind them, faint but growing, came the sound of hooves. Not one horse. Several. Clara stiffened against him. Her whisper trembled. "They'll come." Elias's hand closed over hers. The leather creaked. His voice was quiet, but unyielding. "Let him." The stars burned harder overhead. The desert night seemed to hold its breath. Smoke drifted low over the street, curling through lantern glow. Jed Brayburn knelt in the dirt, clutching his ruined hand, blood dripping dark into the dust. His pistol lay twisted yards away, useless metal beneath the weight of silence. Elias Cole's revolver stayed leveled, steady as the cross on the church steeple. His eyes never left Jed. "Pick it up," Elias said. Jed's breath came ragged. He shook his head, sweat slicking his face. "Can't." "Then crawl," Elias answered. The crowd pressed closer, boots crunching the grit. Every face bore the same astonishment. Fear, awe, disbelief. Clara stood with the rifle still clutched to her chest, her veil hanging in tatters, hair tangled by wind and smoke. Her heartbeat thudded so loud she could feel it in her palms. Yet her eyes did not leave Elias. Jed spat blood into the dirt, snarling. "You're a dead man, Cole. Maybe not tonight, but word'll spread. They'll come for you." Elias holstered the revolver with one slow motion. His voice carried flat, heavy as iron. "Let him come." The words hung over the town like thunder refusing to break. Jed staggered to his feet, cradling his arm, eyes blazing with hatred. He swayed, turned toward his horse. No one moved to help him. The gang's last leader limped into the saddle and vanished into the dark, curses trailing behind him like smoke. The street remained still long after. Only the sound of the horses' fading hooves broke the hush. Then whispers rose. "He didn't kill him, left him crippled. Justice, not vengeance." Clara lowered the rifle. Her hands trembled now, the strength that had carried her through the fight ebbing away. Elias stepped to her side, steadying the barrel with one hand, guiding it down. Her eyes searched his face. In the flicker of light, she saw not just the hardness of a gunman, but the hollow ache of a man who had lost too much. She whispered barely enough for him alone. "You swore never to kill again." His gaze met hers, dark and unwavering. "And I held to it till they made me break it." The town began to move, cautiously at first, as though waking from a spell. The preacher removed his hat, crossing himself. Women clutched children close. Men looked away, ashamed they had not raised a hand. But one voice broke the stillness, the old man with the cane, eyes bright in the glow. "You've seen it now. You've seen the widower of Red Rock stand again." Murmurs surged through the crowd, louder with every breath. The name spread like fire across dry grass. Elias did not answer. He turned to Clara, offering his hand. She hesitated, staring at it, then slid her fingers into his. Together, they walked down the center of the ruined street. Every gaze followed. No man spat now. No woman whispered shame. They passed the saloon, its doors swinging silent, gamblers frozen in awe. They passed the church, its bell ropes swaying in the night wind, creaking like it remembered the vows spoken beneath its roof. Clara's shoulders straightened as they walked. Though her dress was torn and dust clung to her hair, there was no mistaking the fire in her eyes. She was no longer the bride no one wanted. She was the bride of the man who had faced death and stood unbroken. At the edge of town, Elias paused. He looked back once at the crowd, faces pale, eyes wide. He said nothing. His silence was heavier than any speech. Then he mounted his horse, pulling Clara up behind him. Her arms wrapped around his waist, holding tight. The horse shifted, snorted, hooves pawing at the earth. Elias clicked his tongue, and they rode into the desert night. The town watched until both figures were swallowed by the horizon, the stars wheeling above. No one forgot, and long after, the tale grew, told by firelight, whispered in saloons, carried by drifters and riders. How Elias Cole, the widower who swore never to draw again, took a bride abandoned on the church steps. How death came riding into Dust Creek, and how the gunman who had laid down his iron rose once more. How together they stood, broken, scarred, but unyielding, and became more than man and woman. They became a legend,